We do record these sessions, so make them available and that sort of thing. So let me turn on my mic and say hi. So my name is John Meredith, those of you who weren't with us yesterday, and I am a Sumo employee. I am based out of my home in Bedford, New Hampshire. So up on the US East Coast, about an hour to an hour and a half up north of Boston, depending on where in Boston you are. So wanted to welcome you all to class. And today is part of day 2 of a 3-part series. So yesterday we talked about cloud security monitoring and analytics. We built queries around using Sumo logic to see our security information. Today we're going to do another product called the Cloud SIEM product. SIEM standing for Security Information and Event Management. And today and tomorrow the focus is going to be on this Cloud SIEM product. So today is kind of an overview. We're going to show you how to create rules, understand what an insight is, all kinds of fun stuff like that. Tomorrow, we're going to dig deeper. We'll set up the collection side of it. We will talk a little bit more about rules and some other advanced features that more from an administrative perspective. So that is the 3-day track. And like I said, my only ask of you is if you've got questions, please feel free to ask, okay? Like I said, I'm a big fan of questions. So, and having done this for a long time, spent most of my career teaching, questions are very, very important. They help us all out. So please ask them. So somebody first asked, SIEM is an add-on feature. I don't think it's available in my Sumo environment. You're correct. SIEM is an add-on feature. Customers can purchase it. And it is, and again, you can see what it's all about. And see, if you think it's valuable. I believe it is. So just wanted to, again, we'll show it to you and then you guys can decide. But as I said, it is some of our customers don't have it because they're traditional logs and metric customers. They only care about observability. They don't care about security as much. So maybe they didn't purchase this yet. And so basically that's that. One other thing here I want to do is I want to introduce some of our teammates here. So assisting me is Odell and Andrew. And so Andrew, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
We can't hear you.
That's because I made the rookie mistake of leaving my mute on when I turned my camera on. I'm Andrew McLean. I'm a technical account manager here at Sumo. I've been here about 4 years. And I've rarely done that where I leave my mute on, but it happens. And I'm just here to help answer questions. If you've got a question in the, post in the chat and I'll respond and let John do his thing.
Very good.
Great.
Odell, your turn.
Yep, thanks, gentlemen, and everyone. Welcome. My name's Odell Gordon. I'm new to Sumo. I'll be helping John as well. Have fun, learn as much as you can, and pick John's brain. He loves that.
All right. So let me just make sure everybody's got a chance there to talk. So you can either ask your questions directly by unmuting your mic and asking your question, or you can type in the chat box or the Q&A box. One thing about the Q&A box, everybody has access to the questions and the answers. The chat box, if you send it to everyone, then we respond back to everyone. Everyone will see what's going on. If you send it to host and participants, then you won't see we will see the question, me, Andrew, and Odell, and we will probably respond back in kind. So it's just a question of how you want to use the Zoom tool. So anyway, I'm going to stop my video sharing, save some bandwidth here, and let's go ahead and get this party started. So Cloud SIEM fundamentals. Here we go. Our game plan for today. We're going to talk about what the Cloud SIEM data pipeline looks like, how data gets into the Cloud SIEM product. Then we're going to jump into some labs and we're going to log into the Cloud SIEM. We're going to walk through the user interface. Then we're going to talk about threat investigation and how to read a threat and understand what that threat is trying to tell you, what that insight is trying to tell you. And then we'll have a lab for that. Well, I actually have 2 labs for that. We'll investigate insights and then we'll take it even further. So 2 different labs there. And then we'll also talk about customizing and tuning Cloud SIEM by doing some rule tuning, creating your own custom rules and your own custom insights. And then the last hour of today is devoted for you to take the certification exam. So curiosity, if you all wouldn't mind, in the participants box there, if you'd raise your hand if you were with me yesterday. If you were in yesterday's class, if you'd raise your hand, I would appreciate it. I simply like to know how many folks were in yesterday's class from today's class. So just so I have an idea of what baseline stuff I need to cover. So about half the class. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, and again, appreciate that. So good shape. And the point is that there's some things I'll recover here and rehash. So one other thing, when you take the exam, as an offer for you, if you take the exam today and you pass it, if you take a copy of your certificate, and I'll show you how to get that, then you can send an email to training-promotions@sumologic.com, and we will send you back an Uber Eats voucher worth $15. So we, again, that's kind of our way of encouraging you to take the exam, and taking it today and that sort of thing right after the class. By the way, one other thing, the exams are open note, open book, open slides, and I'll show you where the slides and stuff can be had. So we'll try to make that stuff all available to you. We want you, quite frankly, we want you to pass. We want you to be successful. So I'll talk more about the certification exam as we wrap it up today, wrap up the lecture portion. So let's get into it. Cloud SIEM is a security tool that basically takes all of your records and all the information coming into Sumo, and it allows you to forward it to this environment. And then we can take that information and we can glean some intelligence out of it. We can correlate things and we can see things. So the data pipeline discusses how this magic happens. So as I said, our Cloud SIEM, which again stands for Security Information and Event Management System, is an enterprise-grade platform that lets you see what's going on with regards to your security within your company, within your organization, and see what is happening. So here is the data pipeline. Your data comes in through the normal Sumo collection and ingestion process, right? We use the same collectors that we use in Sumo for this process when we ingested that data right in. And we refer to the input here as messages. Once we get those messages, then we are going to start parsing them, right? We know what a CloudTrail log looks like. We know what a CloudWatch log looks like. Additionally, there's ability for us to define the parsing and the mapping. So in the parsing and mapping, we will parse out the fields from the logs. We will map them to our metadata tags, things like source IP, we'll put that field to the source IP. We'll enrich it. Well, you go to CrowdStrike, look that IP up through CrowdStrike and see if there's any threat information on it. And so the output of this generates records. So after we've enhanced everything and enriched everything, we've got records. We're then going to take those records and compare them to a bunch of built-in rules that we have. Now, these rules that we have are based on the MITRE ATT&CK framework, okay? Not sure how many of you are familiar with MITRE and ATT&CK framework, but again, it's a source of known threats, issues, and problems. Additionally, you can create your own rules if you want to. We will maintain our rules and you can maintain your rules. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but we've got several hundred rules already built into the system. Now, if a record matches the rule, for example, maybe somebody's poking around with your firewall, right? Trying to play with ports or something like that. That would invoke a rule, fire off a rule, and that rule would then strip out who the entity is. Is that entity a username? Is that entity an IP address? Is that entity a host name? What is the who element of that? And this generates a signal. So a signal is a known activity that causes us concern or causes you concern, something that you may want to look into. Now, we take this a step farther from generating the signals. We're also going to then correlate those signals based on the entity. So each one of these signals that gets generated has a score. And if the score of these signals corresponding to a IP address, a host name, or a username, the sum of those over a 2-week period is 12 or greater, then we generate an insight from that. So what we're doing is we're basically saying, okay, maybe somebody received a phishing email. And then from that phishing email, they actually opened that email. And these would generate two different signals. And then maybe that generated a malicious file hash. That would be a third signal. And these signals are all weighted with scores, so that when the number of these points is greater than 12, we would see an insight telling us this whole story within a 2-week period of time. So let me first of all see what the questions are here. Okay. So Chris asked Yara rules. I'm not familiar with Yara, so not sure if they can help me with that. I appreciate that, Chris. Okay. Oh, I see. The question is, do we use Yara? There we go. Andrew's asking it. Okay. Yep. Gotcha. So good. So again, we're going to break this down. Again, in your company, if you're Sumo Logic Coffee, which is a wonderful manufacturer of coffee, if you will, we can ingest the logs. Again, it goes through the normal collection and ingestion process. And tomorrow in the administration class, we'll talk about this collection and ingestion process in more detail. We'll set up some sources, ingest the data. Then we're going to, after we get that, we get the messages, we will then start to parse, extract out the fields that we want, transpose the fields if we need to, do some mapping, do some enrichment. In fact, we have a little slide here to kind of help us out. So here in our logs, we see that there's a log here which says IP-127-0-0-1. What our parsing will do is it will say, okay, that looks like an IP address. In fact, we know it's an IP address. Let's transpose it and make it a real IP address. So replace the dashes with dots. And then we're going to go ahead and map that to our metadata field, which in this case is source device IP. And then we're going to enrich it by looking at CrowdStrike, sending an IP address in there, and see if there's any threat levels associated with that. We can also do reverse DNS lookups and various other things to, again, get us intel on what's happening here. Then as far as the records go, once we've got these records, we're going to compare them against a bunch of built-in rules. So we've got hundreds of built-in rules already here that we are going to compare and see if we have a match, right? So maybe we've got records about users logging in, no problem with that, right? Maybe I've got an issue where a user whose account has been deleted tries to log in. I've got a rule for that. And so that would start off and generate a signal saying, hey, this account that's been turned off, somebody's trying to log in with it, okay? And then these rules have severity scores. And these are scores, weights that we assign to them, you assign to them, that indicate, how serious type thing it is. And so this is what generates our signal. Additionally, when we generate and we compare it against the rule and we find a match, we will also extract out the entity. And the entity typically, like I said, is host name or IP address or username, some indication of who. And we're going to combine this information by entity over a period of time. We're going to do this correlation to generate our insights. Now, what this means to you and what it means to me is that, think about it. We've got maybe, several 100,000 records coming in a day. And we're going to bottle it down and generate maybe 6, 8, 10 insights, depending on how much data you have coming in. That is much easier to investigate. Those 6, 10 insights are much easier to investigate than looking at all the individual records, trying to go through all the individual logs, trying to look at even the individual signals. You're probably going to have close to 50, 60 signals, and that's just a lot of work. So we're trying to eliminate analyst fatigue here. We're trying to combine things. The other thing is these insights, when you look at them and you kind of understand them, they kind of tell a story. And that's really kind of powerful to see what's happening. So again, if you got questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. Feel free to unmute your mic, ask them, that sort of thing. Now, in a minute, we're going to look at the Cloud SIEM product. Okay, we're going to log in, we're going to look at it, stuff like that. But here is the heads up display, as we like to call it. And you might notice, those of you who are World of Warcraft aficionados might say this looks kind of familiar. They actually had the designers of World of Warcraft who designed the game actually helped design this interface. So the interface is designed to reduce fatigue. So here in the outside circle, I have all of my records. So I can see I've been ingesting records over this period of time. Now, this period of time can be adjusted. By default, it's 24 hours, but you can adjust it down. So the diameter of the circle, if you will, represents time. Then inside here, I can see all the signals that gets generated. That's what these light blue bars are. And then inside here, based on these signals and their scores and their values, I can then see these various insights. So these red triangles are insights, and these are the actionable things that we think you probably want to prioritize and investigate. Okay. So Brian, you said the red triangles are Murlocs. Well, we call them insects anyway. So let's go ahead and let's log in here and let's play around. For those of you who were with me yesterday, right? I want you all to fire up a Google Chrome or Firefox environment, and I want you. And you know what I forgot to do? Oh no, I didn't. Good. What I want you to do is I want you to fire up Google Chrome or Firefox. I want you to go to service.sumologic.com. And if you don't mind here, I am going to stop my slides for a second. I'm going to take this information. Hold on. Take this information, and I'm going to put it in the chat box. And the second thing I want you to do is I want you to grab a 3-digit number from 001 to 999. Whatever number you want, pick a number, 3-digit number, okay? And type it in the chat box as a lot of your classmates are doing. So we're just trying to make sure people don't grab the same number. Now, again, if 2 of you grab the same number, it's not a big deal. 3 of you grab the same number. But obviously, I don't want 50 people to grab the same number. So put it in the chat box like you're doing. That's great. And so then what you're going to do is, and let me go ahead and fire up service.sumologic.com. And if you don't mind, I'm going to log out here so I see what you see. And so here it wants an email address and it wants a password. The email address is training plus analyst with that 3-digit number. Now, I live in New Hampshire. The area code for New Hampshire is 603. So I'll grab 603 in this case at sumologic.com. Remember, it's got to be an email address. So don't forget the at sumologic.com. And then the password is capital NEY, capital YEAR, numeral 2, exclamation mark, New Year 22, exclamation mark. That is the password. And when you click sign in, it should not let you in. And you might notice some tabs and stuff that are opened up here, stuff like that. But I want you all to log in. And if you're having problems logging in, please let us know. Andrew and Odell will help you out. And I'll get you logged in. Now, I'm going to log in with my credentials because I have a lot more rights across this environment than you do. And I can show you some things. So let me check and see. Can you use the same ID you used yesterday? Absolutely. No problem. Yep. Use the same credentials you did. By the way, the password, just so you all know, changes every month. So on February 7th, which is the first Monday of the month, we will change the password. I do not know yet what that new password is going to be. Okay. We won't know until the day we change it. But if you want, when we get around to February, if you try to log in, and again, you can go into this environment anytime. It's a public environment. You can play around. There's some things I'm going to ask you not to do, but in this class, we're in pretty good shape. In an administration class, I don't want you to take your company data and build a collector to bring in your company data into this environment. We have no business seeing your company information. We don't want you to do something like that. So that's the only thing I'm going to ask you not to do. Don't bring in your company data to this environment. This is a public facing environment. So, but you can use it. You can go back in there and do the exercises and stuff. All of our classes use this environment. So if you want to look at it and take any of our classes, you can come in here and you can see and play and all that fun stuff. Okay. In fact, there's two things. You can, two things. Yeah, also one other thing I should mention, yesterday evening, there was another class. So for those of you with me yesterday, there was our class in the morning, and then there was another class later in the day that someone may have logged in, and again, logged in with the same number that you all used. So you may see some, Andrea's pointed out, you may see somebody's messing with some stuff in there, and that's true. That's absolutely true. Okay. So good point. Now, in here, there's a couple things I want to point out before we get involved into the Cloud SIEM environment. Okay. Number one, here under the Home tab, under Learn, here's a bunch of micro lessons. And we got a whole bunch of micro lessons on the Cloud SIEM thing. You can go out to YouTube and you can do a search for the Sumo Logic channel, and you can subscribe to it if you want. But you can also search for Cloud SIEM, and you'll see that we've got a bunch of videos on Cloud SIEM, various aspects and various things. Okay. Thanks, Odell. Another thing is that we can go out here and you could click on these labs. These are our normal, for our fundamentals class, these are the labs that we have. For our administration class, these are the labs that we have. If you click on any one of these labs, any one of them at all, it will take you into our product documentation where you can see almost all of our labs for almost all of our classes. I say almost all of our labs for almost all of our classes for a specific reason. These new classes, like the Cloud SIEM fundamentals that you're in right now, the Cloud SIEM admin that you're in tomorrow, what we've done is we've decided to create handouts for the labs. And so what I'm going to do here is I am going to upload to the chat box the lab guide for this class. So in the chat box now, there's a Cloud SIEM fundamentals lab guide. And most of you should be able to access it. Hopefully all of you, but some companies disable the ability to share files in Zoom. So back to our Sumo Logic environment, back to our training environment. Over here on the, and again, in the Home tab, under Learn, there is a little community box over on the far right. And if you click on that community box, it will take you to our Sumo Logic community where we and our customers and all that stuff collaborate and work together. And if you do a search for the word slides, I don't care if it's uppercase or lowercase, won't make any difference. You will see that we have a link here to training and certification, lab, webinar, and slides. And for those of you who were with me yesterday, I pointed this out. Now here, for all of our classes, including this one, we have a link to the lab guide, we have a link to a recording of this class, and we have a link to the slides. So this is where you can get that information. And again, I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it in the chat box so you guys can have it. So if you can't download the lab guide that I posted in the chat box, you should be able to go in here, find the Cloud SIEM fundamentals class, and click on labs, and you should be able to see the lab guide there. Okay, and you can download it. Okay. By the way, this panel pops up. Just move your cursor outside of that pop-up panel and click, and it goes away. Right. All right. So that is how we get a hold of the lab guide. Now, what is this lab guide? Well, if you open it up, it's a PDF document, and Lab 0 is how we log into the training environment. And you've already logged in, right? So we're good to go there. That's it. There is one thing though we have to do. It's a little different. When we log in to Sumo Logic, just like you did yesterday, but you're going to want to open this navigation panel. So this panel over here on the left, if you don't see if it's not open, feel free to click anywhere where it says Sumo Logic or click on this hamburger menu. And if you click on it, you'll see that there's a thing called Cloud SIEM Enterprise. And you want to click on Cloud SIEM Enterprise. And this will take you into our Cloud SIEM environment. And the first thing we're going to do in just a minute is we're going to walk through this interface. But I want to make sure everybody's logged in and we're all in good shape. So if you're logged in, please go ahead and raise your hand. If you're having problems, again, please reach out in the chat box to Andrew and or Odell, and we'll get you taken care of here. So help us out. Okay. So please repeat how to get to the SIEM dashboard. Sure, no problem. So bear with me a second while I go back. So I'm assuming that you're able to get into Sumo Logic. Again, it's service.sumologic.com. Again, you're going to log in with training plus analyst 3-digit number at sumologic.com. The password is capital new, capital year, 22 exclamation mark. Once you get here, you want to open up this navigation pane if it's not already open, and click on Cloud SIEM Enterprise. And that's how you get here. And that's where I want you to be. Okay. If you can't log in with a specific number, try a different number. Okay. Try a different number. Jason, you say CSE is not coming up, a blank white browser window. You can try clearing cache. Jason, I question, are you a Sumo employee? Okay, fair enough. The reason I ask is that in our environment, we Sumo employees have a kind of a different DNS setup. And that's why if you were an employee, we'd have to maybe VPN in to see this. That's where I typically see it. Okay. Where is the Cloud SIEM icon I need to click on? That's Michael's question. So let me go back here again to the Sumo Logic environment. And in the Sumo Logic environment, we want to make sure this navigation panel is opened up. And again, down here is our main menu. On the main menu, I have a link to the Cloud SIEM Enterprise. This is what you want to click on to go into the Cloud SIEM environment. Okay. So Michael, I hope that helps and answers your question.
Hey, John, will you show them what it looks like if that panel's hidden, and so how they can open up that panel? Because sometimes a previous user might have hidden that.
Nobody should hide that. I mean,
It shouldn't, but it can happen.
Okay. Actually, I don't know how to do that.
Oh, okay. Go back to Cloud SIEM.
We'll do in a second. You go back to
CSE.
Gotcha.
Yeah, CIP.
Yep.
Click on the little arrow up there next to where it says Sumo Logic, the top left. Yep. So if you're seeing that, then click that three little hamburger menu to get to that.
Oh, if you're not seeing the navigation panel.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that we've talked about a couple times, but I'll do it again. So yeah, if you're not seeing this navigation panel, click on where it says Sumo Logic or this hamburger menu, or you can call it a stack of pancakes, whatever you want to open up that panel. Don't ask me why things relate to food for me. It's probably not a healthy conversation. And then down here in our main menu, you should see Cloud SIEM Enterprise. And again, this is something that can be enabled or disabled across your company. So certain users will have the ability to go in here, certain users may not. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. Okay. Michael says, I see this in the training environment, but I don't see it in my company portal. Is it a separate license? Yes, it is, Michael. So you may have it. Also, Michael, your company may have it, but you may not have access to it. So there's two parts to that question. It is a separate license, that's true, but also it's something that we can restrict access to. And I'll talk about gaining access to that tomorrow and how we set that up. So I appreciate the question, Michael. Michael Z, by the way. So hopefully we are all in and we are all in good shape. Looks like 33 of you out of 83 of you are in. Again, if you're in, please raise your hand so I know that we're in good shape. Okay. Is there any way to get to the labs without being able to sign up to the service? Okay. And also you can't get them from your corporate machine. Number one, I have not asked any of you to log into your corporate environments. So in the training environment, because we have the training data and stuff like that in here, that's the environment I want you to use. Okay. So to answer your question, is there any way you can get to the labs without having to sign up for the service? Sure. You can use our training environment. Jacob, you can use our training environment. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're providing this information. That's why we provided the instructions. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. You can't get the labs. Jacob, can you get the labs from the chat box? Can you get that document from the chat box? Yes or no? And then the other thing I would suggest, okay, I don't know. Okay, hang on a second. Let's do this. I have just re-uploaded the Cloud SIEM fundamental PDF to the chat box. So hopefully, Jacob, you can, okay, you got it. Excellent. So that's all you need. We're in good shape there. As far as the slides, if you're having problems trying to get through SlideShare, I will PDF them and I will upload them. Okay, I will do that later today during the break. So we'll get you the slides. Again, just to be precise here, and not to segue too deeply, if I go into my Learn tab, where I have all kinds of access to things, and I go to my community, I think what Jacob is saying is when he goes to slides and he goes here and he wants to download either the slides or the lab guide, I'll take the slides. It wants you to have some sort of an account, right? Facebook, Google, whatever. And so if that's a problem for you, like I said, I will PDF the slides and I will make them available during the break. Okay. All right. You're welcome, Jacob. Thanks for pointing it out. So now, ladies and gentlemen, hopefully we are all in Sumo Logic, the Cloud SIEM enterprise environment. Okay. Let me lower all the hands and let's talk about this. Okay. So what is this environment? Well, I'm going to start over here on the left. First of all, this is the home button that allows us to come back to this display at any time. So when we go into other areas of the things, we can click on this icon, which says Sumo, and boom, it will take us back here to this heads up display. Now, I can also find specific insights and search for things here if I want to. We'll come back and talk about that later. On the left side, this system is online. Here is my range window. So I am looking back at 24 hours. I can change this to 12 hours. I can change it to 2 days, whatever. The data that I'm seeing here, for the most part, reflects that time frame. So earlier I'd mentioned on this heads up display, this circle goes a period of time. That period of time is set by this selector. The default is set for 24 hours. Now, in here for the last 24 hours, we have received 27,000 records, and that's down a certain percentage here. Out of that 27,000 records, we've generated 1,000 signals. That's up a little bit. And then that's generated 3 insights. So I can see how much stuff we're processing and how things are going here. As far as my insight metrics, if I put my cursor on the bubble right next to the word insight metrics, I can see what my duration, detection time, response time, and remediation time is. Again, this is an event security event information and management system. So we're trying to show you how long it's taking you to resolve things, how long it's taking you to do things, all that. And we'll get to that just a little bit. Okay. Somebody asked, can we have more than 7 days? Again, why would I want more than 7 days when it's a rolling 7 days? Or why would I want more than 24 hours when it's rolling, you know? I mean, once you start using this tool, you should be able to find these insights, track them down, resolve them, and go forward. But if you want more than 7 days, that's a question Andrew might be able to resolve. Here I can see my insights by status. I'll talk about status in just a little bit, but I have 3 brand new insights. I haven't moved any of them to in progress. There are custom statuses that you can create. We'll talk about that tomorrow in the admin class. And then obviously our goal is to close statuses, all right? All right. And then here I can see on the bottom of the far right side, I can see a timeline, again, reflected by our selector switch. And then I can see when the insights were created. So I can see when these insights were created across our timeline. So that's the far right side here. Again, this all-seeing, all-knowing eye, heads-up display, whatever you'd like to call it, shows me, and by the way, it periodically refreshes because, again, it's constantly updating. It shows me the amount of records here that I've got in the dark blue. And then from those dark blue, I'm taking those records and I'm generating signals. Signals are where I have a record that matches a rule. And so these are items of interest. And then from those signals, sorry, from the signals, we generate insights. So I can see these various insights here in the form of red triangles. Now, over here on the far right side, I have my latest insight. In fact, let me shrink this down a little bit. So here's my latest insight. And my latest insight, again, it tells me command and control. That's from the MITRE ATT&CK framework. This particular insight has to do with command and control. And we can open it up and look at it. I'll show you how to do that in just a few minutes. Bear with me. I can see who the entity is. In this case, it's a user, Rico Dynamite. So this is all centered around Rico Dynamite. And there were 4 signals that made this up. Each of these signals has a score. If the sum of those 4 scores is greater than 12 over a 2-week period of time, that's what generates this insight. Now, on the x-axis, I have time. On the y-axis, I have intensity. Now, I realize I shrunk this down. Let me shrink it, maybe add it back out. But the point is, you can actually see where items lie on here across this chart. So I can see here was my first signal. It's as far as on my y-axis, it's severity. It's not as severe as this next signal, which isn't as this other signal isn't as severe as well. So my y-axis is severity. My x-axis is time. I can see I had 4 signals over a 10-day period of time. And this overall insight has been ranked high as opposed to medium or low. So insights will have a severity score of low, medium, or high. Signals will have a numeric score. Now, let me shrink this back out one more time, because down here at the bottom, the lower right-hand corner, I have my syslog. This is my syslog. So if I see anybody's closed an insight or adjusted an insight or done some insight, I'll see it right here in my syslog. All right. So that takes care of that. All right. So let me shrink this back out one more time to make it a little easier for us to see what's going on. Hang on a second here. Okay. And let's talk a little bit about these top menus. So here I can click on Insights, and it's going to show me my insights one of 2 ways. So when you click on Insight, you may see a different display. In fact, you might see something that looks like this. All of your various insights listed. So I can see a list of all my insights, and my latest insight's always at the top. My oldest insight's always at the bottom. I can filter by an insight, by its name, by its resolution, by its severity score, things along those lines. I can add filters if I want to. Right now, I'm seeing all the insights that are not closed. So all the open insights is what I'm seeing. Okay. So here I can see my insights, and I can select an insight if I want to. Now, I can also, if I want to, by clicking on this icon, change it and see what their status is. So I have, and you can customize this status. So typically what might happen in a small SOC team is we have a bunch of new insights, and then we assign it, move it over here to assign it in progress. We assign it to a team. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then that team works to resolve it, understand it, see what's going on. Then they'll move it to closed. As your needs grow, you might have a super SOC SWAT team. And so you could add a status that says, SWAT team, and things get assigned to the SWAT team. These are real issues that require a lot more research, a lot more work, maybe some more expertise, things like that. You can customize this status field, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. Okay. And as I said, you can move these if you want to by dragging and dropping, and I would ask you not to move them right now, because again, that would affect all of us. But you can move them if you want. There's another way to change their status. So that's my insights, and we'll get back to the insights in just a minute. Under signals, here is where I can see all of my signals. Again, the latest signals on top and older signals at the bottom. These are where I have my severity scores. So signals have scores, and I can see the entity associated with these scores. these signals, excuse me, and I could look at the details of these signals, and I can see my MITRE ATT&CK framework structure around this signal. And again, what's caused this signal to fire? Most of these are based on rules. We at Sumo Logic create your rules. And in a minute, I'll show you where you can see the updates to those rules and information about that stuff. So bear with me. And then you can also create your own rules, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Besides looking at insights, looking at signals, I may want to look by entity. So I can select entity, and I can see my various IP addresses, host names, usernames, whatever. So I can see where some of my activity is coming from. So you can do this by insight, you can do this by signal, you can do this by entity, whatever makes sense. We find that insights work best. And then if I need to, I can look at the raw records. Now, we're going to have bunches of records. So the only way you can see a record is by filtering it. The only time that you need to really see records is when you're setting up data collection. You want to make sure that that record got ingested into here. So that's about the only time you're going to go into here. It's the only time you have to worry about this. Tomorrow in the admin class, when we do that, we will see records and play with records. And finally, under content, you will see that I have a whole bunch of things that you don't. So for example, you have rules, you have rule tuning, you have custom insight. I've got a whole bunch of other things. And I've got more rights than you do. And we can set these rights up of who can see and do what. We can do that in the Sumo Logic core platform where we set up security. And we'll talk about that tomorrow, how you can decide who has what rights to what things, what features and stuff like that. So that's a conversation for tomorrow as far as setting that up. But we will talk about rules here, rule tuning, and custom insights a little later on in the class. Additionally, you've got this gear icon. And again, when I click on the gear icon, I've got a whole bunch of options. Maybe you don't even see the gear icon. Again, because I have certain privileges. Some of this we'll talk about tomorrow, but here's where I can add my various actions. I can add my various resolutions. I can add my statuses. This is where your admin can do that sort of thing. And tomorrow in the admin class, we'll talk about that. Okay. Over here, this is where my help is. In fact, you notice I got this red dot. That red dot's kind of important. When I click on this, my red dot, there's a thing under announcements. Every time we update the rules, you can go into announcements and you can see what we've done, what we've changed, what we've updated, things along those lines. So that red gleam is to show you that you have a new announcement. And so you can go into the announcements and see what we changed. Additionally, you can go in here and see our documentation. You can also see our API documentation here if you want, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. It's kind of your help. Over here, this icon allows me to go back to Sumo Logic core platform. So this takes me back to Sumo if I want to. All right. So that's how I can get back to Sumo if I need to. And then finally over here, I can see who I'm logged in as, my time zone, stuff like that. Okay. So that is the interface. Any questions? Okay. Then let's get into and talk about insights and information here. Okay. Again, I can sit there and see my 3 insights here. I could click on one of the insights here, or I could go to insights and see all of my insights. And I'm going to start with this first one, Insight 946 command and control. Okay. So to open up an insight or select an insight, I simply click on it. Now these insights, these numbers that are associated with it, are assigned by our system. So Insight 946. 946 is not necessarily important other than when you assign this to somebody, you're going to tell them to take Insight 946. So now when I look at this insight, again, I've got a left side here, and then I've got this other area. In this left insight area, I have information about this insight. And you'll also notice I have a context menu right here. These 3 dots, or there's 6 dots. And if I click on this context, I can start searching records and start doing searches in the web for various things. You can control this context action, and we'll see this context action switch in other things. Under here, I can assign and take actions to this insight. Maybe I want to launch a JIRA ticket. Maybe I want to notify PagerDuty. Maybe I want to send it and email it to somebody. Maybe I want to send it through Slack or Microsoft Teams. You can, and the administration class will talk about this, how you can add these and customize these actions for your company. So that's something your administrator does. But basically, I may want to notify some folks to take action or do some things. I can, of course, close this insight, which I don't want any of you to do because that'll screw up our class for today and tonight. So I can close the insight when I'm done with it. And of course, I also have the ability to delete an insight, which again, I would appreciate if you didn't do that. Remember, I mentioned we have statuses. Well, here's where I can change the status of this insight. So since I'm going to investigate it, I can mark it to in progress if I want to change its status. Down here, I can see I can also assign it to somebody. I can assign it to my various team members. I can assign it to myself. So I can assign it to whatever users and stuff I want to. And now it's their problem. Okay. Down here, I can see the user, Rico Dynamite. And again, there's this nice little context menu over here to the right that I can click on. And I can look up Rico Dynamite in the internet. I can look at him in our Active Directory environment. I can do a who is search, all kinds of neat, nifty things that we can do to see more information about Rico. Here's our severity score. Here is the information about this insight. There are 4 unique signals, and they were last seen 3 hours ago. Here's when this event was created. I'm sorry, the event first happened. And then here is when we created the insight and how long this has been going on. Here is my MITRE attack framework information, tags and information. And here is where we can comment this insight. So when we investigate this insight, we look into this insight, we have thoughts, we've taken action, stuff like that. Here's where we document that. So here is where we document that information. So that takes care of the left side. Now, over here on the right side or across the thing, what I have, remember this insight consists of 4 signals. So up here, I have a timeline on my x-axis. This is time. My y-axis is severity. And I can see the 4 signals that made this up. Here's the first signal, second signal, third signal, fourth signal. Okay. So I can skip through those signals that way. And I can see the timeline. Now, these 4 signals were generated by rules. They could have also been generated by known anomalies or threat intelligence information or file analysis. Again, if you're dealing with things like malware applications and stuff like that, we may have discovered things through file analysis. Let's see what we've got here for a question. Okay, good. All right. So here I now see the signals that made up my insight. And they always start with the oldest signal going to the newest signal. So I can, you can, we can go into these signals and see what's going on. Again, notice we've got our context menu that I can do some other things with. But if I click on this threat intel match signal, this opens up another window where I'm now looking specifically at this signal. So here I have an AWS API call. So somebody made a programmatic call through my AWS account that has been picked up as a threat. Who, the entity's name, or the user's name is Rico Dynamite, okay? And this is the expression that caught it. Now, if I scroll down here, I can see information. What is it trying to do? The action, the command was to stop logging, right? And that will create a flag every time, right? You've turned some logging off. That's, security logs and stuff like that. That's going to create an issue. I can see the IP address that they came from, which has been resolved to the UK. And I can open up a map in here. Again, I can put my cursor on this IP address and to the right of it. Again, I have this context menu. and I can do a who is lookup, or I can look up and send more information back into Sumo logic to check other logs to see what's happening. I can do a query search, all kinds of nifty things here. Down here, I can see the account ID, the agent, list matches, again, who the user was, the application. I can scroll down, and again, I can see some mapping here. This came from our CloudTrail data. And I can see the various extracted fields. So somebody, Rico Dynamite, from a particular IP address or whatever, tried to invoke stop logging. And here's their source IP address, and they're trying to do this on our AWS account programmatically through an API call.
Would that be CloudWatch information that you're looking at there, or what?
Could be CloudWatch, could be CloudTrail. This happens to say CloudTrail. So, but yes, it could be, any of those. So the source category came from my CloudTrail logs in this case, but it could have been CloudWatch, could have been CloudTrail, could have been anything. Yeah. Now, that's my first signal. I could, if I wanted to, click on signals to go back and see all my signals and go to the next one. Or in this interface, I can just click on this next arrow. So up here at the top right corner, click on this, it's going to take me to my next signal. So the first signal was somebody made an API call, Rico Dynamite made an API call to stop logging. Then later on, I got an API call from a terminated Active Directory account. So an Active Directory account that's been terminated, right, is now trying to do something. So again, this is something I probably need to investigate. Again, I can see the device information. I can see the details of this information. I can see why it's kind of important. I can see various extracted fields, various extracted information. Okay. Then I can go on, and by the way, here's the severity score of this particular signal. Let me go back for a moment. The first signal had a 4, severity score of 4. The second signal had a 6. 4 plus 6 is 10. If I go and look at the third signal, it has a value of 2. 10 plus 2 is 12. If I have a score, a total score of 12, greater than or equal to 12 over a 2-week period of time, that's what generates my insight. So I can, in this case, by the way, this particular signal is telling me that we've got a guard duty alert. Somebody's trying to do some instance credential exfiltration. They're trying to access credential information. And so again, I can see the process here of what happened. Like I said, it kind of tells us a story. So if I go back here to the signals, I can see lumped together what happened is somebody made an API call from trying to turn off logging. And then they also tried to terminate or try to make an API call from a terminated Active Directory account. And then they also then triggered off an AWS guard duty alert on trying to access credentials. And then I also have down here a firewall alert. So these are the 4 signals that make this up. And again, I didn't investigate this 4th signal. So again, it's saying that somebody's trying to knock on my firewall here. And so I can see who this particular user is. Now, my question for you all is, what would I do about this? What do you think we should do about this? Okay. While I'm waiting for the answer here, a couple of questions in the Q&A. Dan asked a question, can we set up our own rules? Yes, you can, Dan. No problem. Absolutely. We'll talk about that later today and tomorrow too, by the way. Another question, using CIP for various dashboards and keep track of signals. Is there a way to query and get the comments that are part of the insight? Yes, there is. So you'll find that with our product here, the Cloud SIEM, you can actually see what you've done, how you've investigated, stuff like that. You can build queries into that. So Jason, to answer your question is yes. And then somebody also asked a question, but insights longer than 7 days. Obviously, you will have information from, however long you've had your environment. So you will have historical data there. But as far as investigating things, I don't know that you want to investigate something that probably happened 2 months ago. You want to investigate stuff that's going on now. But you will certainly have the information, the historical information of when you resolved it, the comments and things like that. So probably help if I understand a little bit that question a little bit more. So, so somebody asked, again, I asked the question of what would we do about that? And so somebody pointed out here, hang on a second, Chris mentioned, hey, lock the user accounts, probably block the IP, depends on the company policy. And you're absolutely right, Chris, and that's exactly the sort of thing I'm looking for. However your company responds to these things, that's the action that you want to take, right? So, you definitely want to probably lock that account down, make sure that account's deleted. Maybe investigate that IP address they're coming from a little bit more. See if it's from a threatening nationality or a known terrorist activity, something like that. Block that IP address. Absolutely. So again, these are the actions you would take. Now, would you personally take those actions? Maybe, maybe not. More than likely, what you would do, or what I anticipate you would do, is you would assign it to some folks. And so here's where you would take the actions to resolve this. And then when those actions are taken, we would close the insight. So hopefully you're starting to see how we can get the information out of this tool, as well as how we can do various things. Now, let me get back to my slides for just a second. So, talked about the interface. In your PDF document that I have provided you, we have 3 different use cases. We have a company called Financial Logic, which has big investors that need GDPR. Those of you not familiar with GDPR, it's data privacy issues associated with Europe. Europe has a much more stringent policy with regards to privacy than we do in the United States, okay? Customers and people can opt out and say, no, you can't use my information, period, okay? We also have Sumo Pharmacy, which is worried about HIPAA and data privacy on healthcare issues. And then we have Sumo Coffee, which needs, again, PCI compliance. So you're going to find that we have 3 different use cases, and we have 3 different scenarios for you to use and understand what's going on. Vincent asked, where's the PDF? Okay, let's put the PDF back up one more time. I'm uploading the PDF in the chat box. So this is the PDF in the chat box. Vincent, I just uploaded it, and you should be able to pull it down. Now, let's take a look at that PDF. So here in the PDF, Lab 0, you logged in, which you did, done. Lab 1, we walked through the Cloud SIEM UI. We did that. We walked through that. Now, in Lab 2 and Lab 3 are broken up into 3 parts. Lab 2A is part of the Financial Logic company demo. Lab 2B is part of Sumo Pharma. And I'm going to tell you that the insight for Lab 2B and 3B doesn't exist. We're in the process of rewriting those labs 2A or 2B and 3B. So don't use 2A and 2B and 3B. I will tell you which one to use in just a second. And then in Lab 2C, this is about Sumo Logic Coffee. So you have some insights here that we can investigate. And if you go into your PDF and you look on page 5, under Lab 2A, this is the one I want you to do. So we are going to go to our insights. We are going to find an insight called persistent and initial access, and I'm going to show you that. And I want you to look at the information there. I want you to look at the signals, and I want you to tell me what is going on, okay? So what I propose to do here is, let's go back, first of all, to my Sumo Logic environment. Bear with me a second. Let me go back to my Cloud SIEM environment here. And again, I can go to my insights. And here, what I want to do, and I don't care which way it's being shown, there's a list or a status. But here under filters, we're going to select name, and we're going to say contains, which is the third option down. And then I'm going to start typing in persistence. And as I start typing in, you will see that I get some choices here. Persistence with initial access or persistence with execution and initial access. We want persistence with initial access. So I'm going to select that one. Now it's going to filter and show me only those insights that have persistence with initial access. And so what I want to do here is I want you to take this first one, Insight 944. I want you to open it up. I want you all to investigate this. I want you to tell me what is happening here. So I want you to open up this insight, and hopefully it loads faster than mine does. And look at the signals and try to figure out what's happening. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes to figure this out, and then we'll talk about it. Okay? So let me run a 5-minute timer here, and I'll talk to you in 5 minutes, and we'll discuss this. Thanks. Then after this, we'll take a break, by the way, for 10 minutes. Hey folks, this is John. A couple of questions have come in. And so I'm trying to address some of these questions and try to help you out here a little bit. So first of all, some of you who might be using the web version of Zoom don't have the chat box and therefore cannot access or seem to access the document that I posted up. Also, some companies restrict that. If you can send to the, again, you can't access the chat box, but in the Q&A or something, put in your email address or send us your email address, we will send you that PDF document. So, and to make it easy here, just to, Odell, could you put in your email address? Let's see, how can we get people access to, let's see. There we go. So Vincent, you sent us your email address. I'm going to ask Odell to send you a copy of that PDF. Okay. So there you go. I know Odell's put in his email address, but yeah, if you could put your email address in here, great. We can send that stuff to you. Okay. As far as getting the PDF, so we'll just email that to you. That's an easy. Okay. Some of the other questions are related around licensing product. I'll let Andrew take care of those. Right. Chat works, just not attachments. And that's because your company has probably blocked it down. Your company doesn't want to share files through Zoom. And I can understand that. That's a reasonable security thing. So I get it. So they've disabled that for you. Now, back to our exercise. So here in lab 2A, you went and found an insight called persistence with initial access. And I'm not quite sure why I lost or closed up this, but bear with me a minute and I'll get it real quick. So again, under my insights here, I am going to go to insight name contains persistence with initial access. So what I'm doing is I'm filtering. So I originally have 895 insights, but now when I filter for that specific insight, I'm down to 91. Okay. And so when I click on this first insight, this latest insight, I can see that this insight consists of 4 signals. And the first signal was a device IP matched a threat intel file hash. The second one was a user received an email with a phishing link. The third one was some sort of a checkpoint threat malicious file allowed. And then the fourth one was a detection summary event of some sort, the CrowdStrike. So my question to you folks, when you looked at these signals, what did you find and what do you want to do about it? Okay. So Michael got pulled into a production issue. Again, here I am in the PDF. I am doing on page 5, lab 2A, trying to find that insight. So that's what we're doing, Michael. Okay. Suzanne says, sign Vagrant up for more security awareness training. There you go. That's certainly one thing. Yep. Okay. Lock the user account, isolate the host from the user. Yeah, that's good. That's right. So. Okay, scan that IP address with antivirus software. Absolutely true. Says the user was phished, downloaded malware, and need to take the machine network offline. Absolutely right. So my question for you guys is this. How are you guys detecting this? Is your company detecting this, right? How are you guys being made aware of problems, issues, and stuff like that? Is it one of those things where the user sends you, my computer's acting kind of strange, or yeah, I clicked on an email just like it told us not to. How are you guys detecting this? This tool, this environment is, in my mind, very powerful to tell us what is happening within our organization. And again, these built-in rules, you didn't have to create any of these rules. These rules were built for you by us. And now we may show you things or make you aware of things that aren't a big deal to your company, but we're going to try to err on the side of I'd rather tell you more than tell you less. So I think you're going to agree. Hopefully you agree with me that this is a pretty powerful tool. Now, one thing, when I, take his machine or take his or her machine offline and I scan it and I scrub it and I make them aware of, training awareness and security awareness and don't click those phishing emails and all that fun stuff. Then I typically can go in here and again, I can change its status. I can decide what actions we need to take. I can close the insight, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, most importantly, don't forget to add comments about what actions you did. All right. And as somebody asked earlier, gee, I've got all these comments. I've got a history of what I've done and all that fun stuff. Is there some way I can run queries against that in Sumo, the Sumo core platform? And the answer to that question is yes, you can. I want to generate reports and see, here's what my SOC team's been up to. Here's all the issues we've resolved. Here's what we've been doing. This is how we justify our existence and ask for more money. Okay. Yeah, Chris also points out, ask them why they're checking email on a domain controller. Yeah, there you go. Good one. All right. Yep, they should be on a client machine. So this, like I said, is particularly powerful. This is the example of these insights. Now, I told you all we take a 10-minute break. So let's do that. Let's take a 10-minute break and I will set up my 10-minute timer and I'll see you when this timer gets bound to 0. So please take a break. Grab yourself some more coffee, tea, juice, water, and we'll continue this in just a little bit. Thank you. Hey folks, this is John. Hopefully we are back and you've all had a nice break. Got a chance to recharge up the beverage cup. And we are ready to roll again. A couple things. Number one, I understand some of you still don't have a copy of the PDF. It's not critical that you have it, but it's probably very handy. Again, if you don't have it, if you can put your email address in the chat box, we will make sure we send it to you. So that's my ask there. And the nice thing about this PDF is that you can go through these exercises. Again, I do want to remind you, we just did lab 2A, okay? 2B and 3B do not exist. Those insights have been taken out, and we will rewrite a new lab 2B and 3B. But what I want to do next is I want to go into lab 3A. So in lab 3A, we want to continue this investigation. You may recall that we did a persistence with initial access. Well, let's take advantage of some things. Let's take a look at some things. Let's really take advantage of the power of Sumo, not just the Cloud SIEM power, but other things. So here, my persistence with initial access, as I mentioned before, we have this IP address, 192.168.38.102. I can, if I want to, click on the context menu. And on the context menu, you'll see I've got lots of choices. Again, I can do a reverse lookup on it, that sort of thing. But one of the things I can do is I can also do a Sumo log search. And so when I click on that, it's going to then take me and it's going to check all of my logs for this IP address. Now, of course, it's only looking at the last 15 minutes. So let's kind of widen it up a little bit, maybe give it 3 days. And so here, I can look at my Sumo logic environment. And by the way, here is where I may want to go back more than just 7 days. So again, for the purposes of monitoring my security and stuff like that, 7 days probably sounds about right. If I want to go back historically, then I probably want to take advantage of some of the Sumo logic, functionality here. So here I can see where this IP address and stuff has come from. Additionally, as we learned yesterday, those of you in yesterday's class, we can use the power of the log search here in Sumo, and we can create queries. So for example, here on page 10 of the PDF, there's some code. I'm going to copy that code. I'm going to paste that code in here. Only I need to change the IP address. So I believe the IP address, if memory serves, was right here. So let me take that IP address. Let me copy it. Let me paste it out. Now, one little thing I need to warn you of, and that is when we're copying and pasting from a document, the parentheses and the quotes and stuff like that sometimes get messed up. So if this is not in red, and it's not, that means the quotes, it's not recognizing these as simple double quotes. So I'm going to type in a double quote there, excuse me, a double quote, John. I'm going to type in a double quote here, get rid of this, because again, the text editor changed those from normal single text double quotes to smart quotes. And so now, and I'm also going to backspace on this a little bit. And I'm going to run this for, say, the last 3 days. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm looking at my security records and I'm looking for this IP address. And then I want to count by where I've seen the logs, where this information is coming from. So I can see where this IP address has been in my Sumo logic environment, okay? So I can see it's been recognized by CrowdStrike. It's been recognized by Proofpoint. I can actually go into the messages and I can actually see the messages and where this has been. And so my message to you was really simply this. Obviously Cloud SIEM is a very powerful tool, lets you take action and stuff like that. But that in conjunction with our normal security analytics portion makes it an extremely powerful tool where you and I can look up and see where this IP address or this user or where these types of attacks have occurred before in our logs, where our logs have recognized that. So Michael asked, how did I get to the screen that I was on before? Okay. I was in the Insight, and here in the Insight, if I click on my IP address here, and I click on the context menu there, you'll see there's an option here to go into Sumo Logic Search. And that will take me back into the Sumo Logic Analytics platform, and it will then build this query for me. And then I can run this query and see this data. So that's how I got there. I could have, if I wanted to, go in from the Cloud SIEM product, go back here to my continuous intelligence platform, and run my query from here as well. Okay. This is the security analytics stuff that we talked about yesterday. So again, in Sumo Logic, I can query anything, query any of our logs, query things to see what's going on. So again, gives you a bigger picture. And that's really the purpose of exercise 3A. We're trying to show you how you can leverage more of and search more about the IP address or the user or whatever, and see basically what's going on and finishing your investigation. So there's lots of integration to this that you can use. Any questions about lab 2 or lab 3? Okay, terrific. Then let's do this. Let's jump ahead here. And again, I apologize, there's lots of slides. I'm going to save you the viewing of the slides. Are not that important. What I want to do is I want to talk next here about customizing and tuning your Cloud SIEM environment. So we can create rules. Now, we at Sumo have done a pretty darn good job of providing you a whole bunch of rules across a whole bunch of spectrums. But your company has some unique issues. There are some issues and stuff that you have that might happen existing only in your company. So you can create rules yourselves. So a Cloud SIEM rule is logical code that basically creates a signal. When it looks at a record and the record matches the signal or matches the rule, it then fires and creates the signal. So you'll find these rules, there are 4 types of them. They're fairly easy to create. I'm going to show you one of the types here today. I'm going to show you 2 more types tomorrow. So out of the 4 types, we're going to show you that. Additionally, we're also going to talk about rule tuning and creating insights. So again, we have records. These records are the information that comes in. If the record matches my rule, we're going to generate a signal, right? The signal tells us we've got a problem. It's going to parse out my entity, and it's going to provide me a severity score, a severity level. Okay, 4 types of custom rules, and these make great test questions. There's a match rule. And the match rule, basically, it matches on a simple Boolean condition. I want to look for a single successful login from an IP address that's on a banned list, right? I want to look for some criteria. It's a simple Boolean condition. If the result's true, we're going to fire off the rule. That's simple. We have threshold rules. So here we're looking for a specific count of records that match a given condition. So maybe I'm looking for 5 failed login attempts in a specific time frame under 1 hour. Threshold rule, right? Could be an example of a brute force attack. A chain rule is where I chain 2 or more things together. So, for example, I want my 5 failed login attempts followed by a successful login attempt in under an hour, within an hour. Okay. So you can chain things together if you want to, different conditions. And then finally, we've got an aggregation rule. And an aggregation rule matches the condition based in a time window. So I want to see all the different connection attempts by a single IP address within that hour. And I want to aggregate that. Or maybe I want to aggregate, a series of IP addresses. So these are the 4 types of custom rules that you can create. And here's the screen that we're going to do it. And in just a minute, we're actually going to do it. Okay, I'll get into that. Again, it's real simple. You're going to create an expression that says, here's my criteria. You can add a rule tuning expression to this rule. I'll talk about what a rule tuning expression is, but basically a rule tuning expression allows you to create an exception to a rule, okay? And then over here on the right, you're going to define the name of this rule, a summary message, a description message, and you're going to provide a score. Now this score or this alert value or whatever can range from 0 to 10. Test question, 0 to 10. That's the range of it, okay? So you can define the severity score. Now, if somebody's going to ask the question, what's the best practice here as far as severity scores? And the problem is there really isn't a best practice. The question is, how severe is that issue to your environment? If it's fairly severe, you're probably going to give it a higher score. Now, I will tell you that one of the things we're going to do whenever you create a rule is we're going to test it. And if necessary, we're going to adjust the score. So as far as best practices for creating your own custom rules, first of all, check to see if the existing rules exist first, so you don't have to create your custom rule. Maybe they exist and they're disabled for whatever reason. You can enable them. Know your system well. What kind of attacks do you see in your company? Do you have a bunch of users who are pretty bad about changing their passwords or that they always change their passwords in a certain way and such that they do it on a Friday and they come in on Monday and they lock themselves out, right? So that's something that typically happens in your company. You know your users, you know their habits, you know what's going on. If you know you're going to do some firewall maintenance, right? Then, again, it's going to fire off a lot of rules because some firewall activity is going on. Something to consider there. Know your risk appetite and priorities, right? If you're a simple software company, your risk appetite is whatever. If you are a bank or a healthcare provider or something like that, I suspect your risk appetite is much less, right? You don't want any risk. You want to minimize that, right? If you're the holder of a bunch of credit card data, your risk appetite is almost non-existent, right? You don't want any. So understand your business and business well. Understand the 4 different rule types, okay? Makes good sense. And then also make small changes in test. And here's where the changes in test come into play. Earlier, I mentioned about the severity score. You may arbitrarily pick a score of, say, 5. When you test it and you make changes, we recommend you move it up or down by one at a time. Don't go from like 5 to 3 to 7 to what, no, just one increment at a time. The other thing that's going to be very important here is that when you create a new rule, you will mark it as a prototype. When you check mark it as a prototype, what it does is it will not be used to generate insights. So when you create a rule, obviously you want to test it first, right? Which means you don't want to generate a bunch of false insights. So one of the things when we create a rule, there's a little checkbox that says, mark this as a prototype. Now you might think, well, gee, I'm pretty smart. I know what I'm doing. Maybe you've used Cloud SIEM before. Every one of our consultants that has used Cloud SIEM for a number of years always marks new rules as prototype. We don't cheat the system here. Even though we know this is probably going to we want it to generate an insight, we need to test it. You need to test it. And by marking it as a prototype, you will ensure that no insights are generated from it. Then once you're tested and you're happy with it, you can go in and clear that prototype checkbox and then put it into, have it generate insights. So when we mark it as a prototype, it will prevent it from generating insights. So that's rules. Now, rule tuning is something else. Rule tuning allows us to modify existing rules without rewriting them from scratch. For example, I've got rules in here about firewalls, right? I don't want people to mess with my firewalls. But I've got that user or users who are going to mess with my firewalls. They're called my network administrators. And therefore, I may want to create a rule tuning to apply to my firewall rules that says, hey, if John Meredith's doing this, don't fire off the rule. John Meredith's a network admin. Let it go. So we can create exceptions to the rules for various situations. And the cool thing about doing this through rule tuning is we can apply a rule tune to a series of rules if we want to, or a rule may have a bunch of rule tuning applied to it. So we can apply these. And the beauty is if the rules get changed by us or by you, the rule tuning is unaffected. So the rule tuning is where we want to create exceptions to a rule. That's what rule tuning is all about. And that way, as we do our updates to the rules and stuff like that we created, your rule tunings are still there, still in effect. Life is good. Okay. So that's rule tuning. Rule tuning are the exceptions. Rules, of course, can be used to generate insights. Now, sometimes we want to have it create and generate a custom insight. We want to, based on some rule, we don't care if the score is greater than 12. We want it to generate an insight now. It's important to us. It's an issue, right? Maybe somebody's trying to log in as my administrative group, right? That might be higher priority, or somebody's logging in as the CFO when the CFO is not available, right? Those sort of things. Somebody's cutting a bunch of expense checks or something that's not, part of my accounting team. We want it to generate an insight now. We don't want to wait till it gets to the score of 12 within 2 weeks. So insights, when we create an insight and we think about those insights, again, insights consist of signals, right? So if I look at all my circles here and I add my circle scores up, these are all alerts, my circles. So 1 + 1 + 3 + 2 + 2, that gives me a total, right? The total being 9. If I look at my green squares, I add those up, 4 + 1 + 2 + 3 + 2, gives me a total. If I look at my red triangles, I add those up. The point is, again, if the value is greater than 12 or 12 or greater over a 14-day period, it will generate an insight. So when we combine these and add them up, we will see that this is greater than 12. This is greater than 12, so these generate insights. This is not yet greater than 12. And that's how this works. So when you have a rule has a score, that score gets added with other signals that are dealing with the same entity. And if that happens over a 2-week period of time, that's greater than or equal to 12, it fires off the insight. So sometimes you may want to create a custom insight. It'd be based on one rule or a chain of rules, whatever you want. Again, allows for faster alerting for specific known threats and no change to existing rules or insights. So it's a way for you to deal with things. Now, we've talked about 3 things. We talked about rule tuning, which allows us to create exceptions to existing rules. Talked about creating custom rules because you want to define a unique threat or data source unique to your system. And then we can create a custom insight because we want to be alerted to things. We want it to fire off. Okay. Okay. All right. So that's what we're going to focus on right now. We're going to do a series of labs. So once again, we're going to go back to this lovely PDF document, and I'm going to walk you through this. So what we want to do is we want to go to lab 4. We're going to start with a rule tuning expression here in lab 4. So I'm sorry, I didn't do that. Let me get back to this full screen. Let me go back into my Sumo logic environment here. Let me stop my slides. Go back into my insights here. Let me go back into my home. Don't have to go back to my home. I can do this from anywhere. And what we want to do is we want to go to this content pull down. So here under this content pull down, you'll see rules, rule tuning, and insights. I see a whole bunch of other things. Okay, I've got full administrative rights here. We want to select rule tuning. Now, when I go in here to rule tuning, hopefully I don't see any rule tunings, but I could. Let's see. I do have some rule tunings in here from previous classes. So the point is I'm going to throw these rule tunings away because we shouldn't really have any, and I need to clean this up anyway. So I'm going to kill these rule tuning expressions and we're going to add our own. One thing I'm going to ask of you is when you create the rule tuning with me, I'd like you to put in the name of it rule tuning. That way I can find it. So currently our system doesn't have any rule tunings. We want to create one. Up here in the upper right hand corner, there's the option to create. We'll click on create. And in the name, I want you to put your initials and I want you to put the word rule tuning. So that's what I'm going to search for. Okay. So we are going to create a rule tuning here. And then the question is, do we want this rule tuning to apply to all of our rules or selected rules? And I hope you're going to choose selected rules. That's what we want. And then the question is, okay, what rule do we want to play with? And so where it says type to add a rule, I'm going to start typing in the word firewall. And when I type in the word firewall here, I see I've got all kinds of firewall alerts. My AWS network firewall, one for training, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm going to grab the one that says checkpoint firewall. Now, this rule happens to be disabled, and I'll show you in a minute how you can enable it. But let's assume for a second that we have a checkpoint firewall. And when I or you do maintenance on it, because we're the administrator, I don't want the rule to fire. So if this was enabled, and I'll show you, like I said later, how to do that, what I can do is I can say I want to either include or exclude records that match this expression. So here's where some Boolean logic happens. So if I start typing in user, you'll see here I've got user email, user role, user ID, user name. I'm going to grab user email. So I have user email equals, and then here in this environment for little strings, we put them in single quotes. So I type in one single quote and I get single quotes at both ends. And I am going to type in my email address. Okay. And so there's my exception. Now, the question is, when I read this, does it make sense, right? I want to include records that match this. So if John Meredith is playing with the firewall, I want to fire off a rule. I want to fire off that rule. That's not what I want. I want all the other users than John Meredith. So I want to change this equality operator from, bear with me a second, I'm trying to move my cursor there. Right in front of my equal sign, I'm going to put an exclamation mark. So now it says where user email is not equal to J Meredith. So this rule will fire if anyone other than J Meredith tries to access this. But if J Meredith does, it doesn't fire. Now, I could have put the exclamation mark there, or I could have also said to exclude. So it just depends on how you want to do this, but you want to get the Boolean logic right, okay? And then when you're done with this, you can hit submit. And if I go back here, here's my rule tuning, here's my information. If I go back here to content, I can select rule tuning here, or I can select rule tuning there. And in a minute, I will see all the various rule tunes, including the one I created. Might take a minute. There we go. Yeah, I see you've all been following along. Okay, that's great. Okay, so we can see these rule tunings. We can obviously disable them if we want to. We can delete them if we want to, et cetera, et cetera. That's how you create a rule tuning. Now, let's talk about creating a rule. Under content, under rules. Here are our existing rules. Bear with me. Let's load them up. And you can see many of them are enabled. Some of them are disabled. So in your environment, you can turn off some of these if you need to, because maybe they're not applicable in your environment. Maybe you don't get those, you don't have those types of systems. Maybe you don't have checkpoint, firewall, whatever. So you can enable or disable. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new rule. So again, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see I have an option to create. By the way, notice I also have an option to import. We'll talk about that in a second. Although actually, let me talk about it now. I can export any rule as JSON, and then I can import it if I want to. So you can export it as JSON, go into text editor, change it, import it in if you want to. Okay. Thank you much. So we're going to go ahead and click create. Now here are my 4 rule types: match, threshold, chain, and aggregation. Tomorrow, in tomorrow's class, we're going to talk about threshold and chain. Today, all we're going to focus on is match. So when I click create and match, I give this thing a name. Again, What I would like you to do is type in your initials, and I'd like you to type in match rule. So I can easily find this, because I've got to clean out these rules when we're done, okay? I've got to clean this environment up. Again, this rule is going to be enabled. Now, when you create a rule, there's two parts to this. One, what triggers things. Two, when it's triggered, what am I going to specify? What am I going to say, right? So if I go back to my documentation here, my PDF, and where it says here, lab 6, lab 5, create my match rule, you will see that it's going to create a match rule based on my device IP equal 127.0.0.1. Okay. Again, I can copy this code if I want to. I can go in here, and where my match rule is down here, I can paste this in. Again, I remind you that when you're copying and pasting code, and it's got things like quotes in it, single quotes or double quotes, they probably did not come in correctly. So replace the quotes in there. So this literal string is in red, and that's the way it should be. So if my device IP is my loopback IP address adapter, 127.0.0.1, I want to fire off a rule. Now, what do I want the rule to say and all that stuff? That's over here. So first of all, what entity am I dealing with? So when I'm using this device IP address, the entity I probably want is the device IP. Maybe I want the username. I don't know, but we're going to go with device IP. And then what name do I want to put in here? We have, loopback IP issue, whatever. And then for the summary, when I get this alert or get the signal, or what I want to put in the summary block, loopback IP being used, whatever you want to type in here. In my description, I can type in anything I want to. Houston, we have a problem. Okay. And then you can decide what the score for this is going to be. And as I mentioned, this goes from 0 all the way to 10. So you decide how important this is. If somebody's using a loopback adapter, it's probably not that important, okay? But again, in this example, was going to go with it. I'm able to give a score of 2. Now you can do it based on constant, or you can also do it based on some sort of dynamic associated with some specific field. So we're just going to simply use constant. And like I said, I'm going to give it a score of 2. Then I get to add my moderate attack framework tags. So what tactic and technique is this associated with? So if I click tactic, you'll see I've got a bunch of information here, right? And so I can, maybe this is under discovery. I can also add, if I want to here, additionally, other tags. If I want to here, right? Tactic and technique, various tags associated with this to kind of keep things organized, right? So maybe data obfuscation or whatever. So you're going to pick the tags and techniques associated with that. Now, again, here, very important, you are going to mark this rule as a prototype. You're going to check this checkbox, fill in that box, whatever. Because that will prevent this from generating insights. Imagine creating a rule and not checking this checkbox, and all of a sudden your SOC team is getting bombarded with insights. Not going to be your best day as a SOC team member. Always, 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 always mark it as a prototype. Okay. And then I get to submit. And then lo and behold, here I see the rule. And I can see when this rule is starting to become and being used. I can see when it's been used throughout my system, okay? In fact, if I go back here to my content and I go back to my rules, and if I click on a rule like Active Directory password spray attacks here, which is one of our built-in rules, I can see when that has shown up, okay? So I get a sense for that sort of thing. And again, I can disable any rule that I want to or whatever. And that's how we create a rule. Last thing we want to talk about here is to create a custom insight. That's lab 6. So we're going to create a custom insight. So under content, custom insight. And so here is where, and typically we don't have any custom insights, so not sure where this came from. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and delete it. But you and I can create a custom insight. Why? Because we want to be alerted. We don't want to wait for the score to get greater than 10. So when I create my new custom insight, of course, over to the right, I click custom insight. Again, I am going to put in here my initials, and I would like you to use for the name of this custom insight. So again, I can clean these things out. Now, again, what I'm doing here is what causes this to be triggered, and then what do I want to say in the insight? So it says here when signals are created with the following signal names. So here I can do it by signal names, or I can do it by rules. I'm going to create rules, and I'm going to pick a rule, any rule. Let's just grab that new JWM rule I just created, my match rule. I'm going to select that rule here if I want to. Now I could add more than one rule in here, and I could say they can exist in exactly the order I've specified or in any order. So if I wanted to add another rule, I could. And again, I can control the order. So this is the criteria that's going to generate my insight. Now, one thing I didn't mention till now, and I'll mention it now, when you're creating rules and insights and stuff like that, you've got this lovely golden triangle. This golden triangle will not let you hit the submit button until you clear everything up. So this golden triangle is telling you what you're missing. So it's a very handy thing to make sure that you don't forget something. So it wants me to put in a description. And so again, I've got a loopback IP address. That's what my rule is all about. And again, on my insights are actually have 4 levels: low, medium, high, and now critical. So this is something you arbitrarily decide that you want to give that insight. And then once again, you provide the MITRE attack framework information. So this will generate an insight. And I click submit. There is my insight. Again, I can go back here to my custom insights, and I can see all my custom insights that are created. And I see you all been very busy. Okay. That's how we create a custom insight. Now, that takes care of the labs. Bear with me. We created a rule tuning expression. We created a custom match rule, and we created a custom insight. And that pretty well wraps up the course. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the opportunity for you guys to take your certification exam. So that's the next thing I'm going to walk you through. But before I walk you through that, what questions have you with regards to this?
Is it possible to turn SEIM on like with a trial license or something?
Okay. I mean, I'll let Andrew take care of that, but I think the answer to that question is yes. You can also sign up for a free trial.
Yeah, we can do, if you're an existing account, we can get with your account team and get you a POV going with Cloud SIEM for sure.
Okay, thanks.
I do actually, unfortunately, have to step away for a customer meeting in 2 minutes. So
No problem. I've got the exam. That's
fast as I can.
Yep. And Vincent asked a question: is it too late to sign up for the admin class tomorrow? No, it's not too late at all. Okay. So yes, if you want to sign up for the admin class tomorrow, and in fact, that's one of my things is that after this class, the next logical class for you to take is the Cloud SIEM admin class, which is happening tomorrow. So I would encourage you to go ahead and sign up for that. And in fact, I'm going to take a moment here and I'm going to show you, if you haven't already, where you can. So again, I'm going to simply go out here. In fact, actually, I'm going to go out here to our public facing website, www.sumologic.com. Our public facing website. And it helps if I spell Sumo Logic correctly. I am hearing a football scholarship sometimes. Anyway, okay. So here in our public facing website, here on the little hamburger menu, under resources, down here under learn is where our education area is. And so here is where you can sign up for tomorrow's session. So tomorrow's session, again, Thursday, here's the morning session. These times are Pacific time. But this is where you can register for those classes. Okay. And again, if somebody's curious, I'll put this in the chat box. Okay. Michael, did you send me that email, Michael 1? If you did, that's great. I haven't gotten to it yet. Okay. I went to look at my email during the break and everybody reminded me, oh my gosh, you're showing your email. So it's like, oh, okay. So I'll send it to you. Don't worry, Michael. If you send me your email, I'll send it to you. So no problem. All right. Let's see what other questions. So that's done. Can we make prototype on insights as new insights should not be created for more alerts? Well, think about it. An insight is an alert. An insight generates something, right? An insight shows that red triangle. So the point is you may want to create a rule that generates a signal, but insights aren't necessarily prototypes. And so you don't prototype an insight. It's going to create an alert. So the only time you want to create an insight is when you know you've got some suspicious thing going on that you definitely want to flag. So the rules are something you would create as a prototype, not insights. So I appreciate the question. The answer to your question, though, more specifically, is no, you cannot prototype an insight. Now, it would be nice, maybe a future enhancement might be for us to give it a different gleam, like instead of a red triangle, maybe we give it an orange triangle, something like that. So that'd make a good enhancement. You feel free to put that in. Did you point out where you can look and learn about MITRE ATT&CK? No, actually, I didn't. But you can search for the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And there you can see the various framework tags and stuff. So I didn't mention that, Dan. Again, either people who have exposure to MITRE ATT&CK or they don't. And if they don't, you're right, they probably want to look that up. So speaking of that, though, let me also go one other place. Again, in our documentation, in our Sumo logic documentation. So again, if I bring up a browser here and I type in help.sumologic.com, that is our product documentation. Here in our product documentation, we have a chapter on, yes, the Cloud SIEM enterprise environment. So here you can go into the Cloud SIEM enterprise environment and you can read, for example, if you want to create rules, you'll see that in our rules, right, how to, the syntax of a rule, how to write a rule, all of that fun stuff. So here's where you can get into the syntax and various other things. And I forgot if we have a link in here to the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So bear with me a second. Let me just check real quick because it would make a lot of sense for us to do that. Description stage. Yeah, we don't have a link to the MITRE ATT&CK framework here. We should. So thanks for pointing that out. Is there a way we can have a dashboard or window which tells us what our coverage of all of our TTPs per the MITRE ATT&CK framework? Yeah, you could build something in the Sumo logic security analytics, break it down by MITRE ATT&CK framework, tactics and techniques. So you could build something. I'm not sure if we have a built-in dashboard for that. I don't think we do. We do have some built-in dashboards on security that provide a lot of information about the Cloud SIEM, but I'm not sure we have something there. So, yep. And yeah, coverage based on the rules you created. Yes, you certainly could. You could create something very easily. Yep. So again, what happens is that the Cloud SIEM environment becomes a repository that you can write queries against in Sumo logic. And so you can very easily do that. All right. So good questions. Anything else before we get into the exam? Okay. As far as the exam goes, I want you to log out of your Sumo logic environment. Okay. There's a reason why. Currently, you're all logged in as training plus analyst with some crazy number, right? That's not who we want to take the test. We want you with your name to take the test. We want you to get credit for passing the test, okay? So we want to make sure you log out of the training environment. How do you do that? Again, if you open up the navigation panel over here, again, by clicking on the hamburger menu if you need to, and then down here where your name is, or training analyst name is, you click on it and you click sign out. Then we want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. Whether you have Cloud SIEM or not doesn't make any difference, okay? Log into your company's environment so you're logged in as you. You're logged in as you. Then, so you're going to log in, and down here in the navigation panel, you want to make sure it's got your first name and last name, that sort of thing. Then to get to the certification exams, you're going to click on this home tab where the house is. You're going to go over here to certification. Here in certification, there's a button that says get certified. Now, all of you yesterday who took the exam, you click on get certified today, it'll take you right to our learning management system. For those of you who weren't with us yesterday, who've never taken a certification exam, when you click on get certified, it might take you here. And then you go back here and you click on this and it takes you back there. And you might think that's a bug. It's not a bug, it's a security feature, okay? We don't want to move you from one environment to another environment without your permission. It's important to us, security, right? So the way you get around that, so it does do what you want it to do, is, again, you're going to open up your navigation panel, logged into your company's environment. You're going to click on help. And when you click on help, you want to click underneath help to community. Now, when you click on community, a panel will pop up for you. It won't pop up for me because I did this a long time ago, and once you fix it, it's fixed. But you'll get this pop-up panel that says something about verify your email. We got to verify your email. And there's a button on it that says verify email or allow or whatever. Click on that button. You will then, within a couple of minutes, get an email from Sumo Logic. And in the body of that email is a button. Click on that button, and now this problem goes away. You have now given us permission to allow you to move from one environment to another. So now when you go into home, certification, click get certified, it takes you into our learning management system. Now, a couple things I want to point out here to you, just so you know. Over here where it says become a Sumo Logic expert, this is our self-paced training. Also, if you click on become a Sumo Logic expert, here's where you can find out what those passwords are. So when we change the passwords, we post that information here, okay? This is where the passwords are kept. And if you go under security, you will see that we have a Cloud SIEM Fundamentals self-paced course. We also have some other courses. Cloud SIEM, Threat Hunting with Windows, Security Pipeline, all kinds of self-paced courses that you can go through. But these are the courses. These are not the exams. To get to the exams, I'm going to go back again. And here where it says get certified, that's where the exams are. So I want you to click on get certified, and you'll see that all of our exams are here, and we've got lots of them in lots of different languages. So my advice to you is to go down here by subject and click on SIEM. And it will filter and show you only two exams, our Cloud SIEM Fundamentals exam and our Cloud SIEM Administration exam. This Fundamentals is today, the Administration is tomorrow. So if you click on the Cloud SIEM Fundamentals exam, it will then give you an option to register. You'll have a registration button. You click on that button, boom, you're registered. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to just kind of watch for a second, okay? Humor me. Just don't try to follow along with me as I'm doing this, okay? So before you start, right, the exam consists of only 20 questions, not the usual 30. So you got 20 questions, you got 60 minutes to complete it. The exams are open note, open book. If you get stuck, ask me. I will be here while you're taking the exam. That's why we want you to take the exam now. Our normal passing score is 75. This is a new exam. We're going to make the passing rate 70. So again, information here. Then when you click next, we're going to show you terms of use. Yes, the exam is copyrighted by Sumo Logic and right. Shall be reproduced, sold, otherwise, all that good stuff. Next, this now takes me to my exam. And it says here, hey, welcome, John Meredith. You've got 20 questions, 16 minutes, and you can take this. When you're ready to take it, ready to start, here we go. Here are the questions. All right. Now, again, I don't want you to follow along right now. I want you to watch. So how are signals clustered to trigger insights, right? You can see it's the radio button, so there's only one correct answer. So they are based on the total severity score of those signals. That's the correct answer. Next, move to the next. Which Sumo Logic Cloud SIEM component sends emails? Emails are under actions. Actions are part of insights. So I'm going to answer those first two questions in this case, just to show you. Then I'm going to go down here to the bottom, or whatever the bottom here is. Oh, I know. It's over here. Hang on a second. Yes. And I'm going to submit my answers. Now, I've only answered 2 questions, so I'm obviously not going to pass. All right. But it's going to show me when I submit, it's going to show me my score. So I'm going to submit. It says continue course. You didn't answer all the questions. I don't want to continue the course. I want to. I think there's more to this than meets the eye. Hold on. There is another. There should be another option down here that lets me submit it, and I'm not seeing it for whatever reason. Hang on a second. There we go. Submit all answers. Let me shrink this back down. Okay. It said I didn't pass. Okay, great. I didn't pass. But I can now see what questions I got right, and I can see what questions I got wrong. And then here's the kicker. Here's the reason I'm doing this. This submit button results, when you pass the exam and you're very proud of yourself, and I'm proud for you, please make sure you click submit results. Why? Because that's going to write this to your profile. So up here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile. And this profile is where we keep track of all the exams that you pass. So here's where you can see your certificate, and you can screen capture it and send it to us and get that Uber Eats voucher, right? That's where you can see that lovely stuff. Or if you'll bear with me just a moment, this really does need to get out of my way. Hang on, I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second so I can close something up here. There we go. That's what I really wanted to do. That's better. Let me share my screen again. There's a bar that gets in my way in Zoom, and so I had to get rid of that. So back to here, you can also add this to your LinkedIn profile. But if you don't click that submit button, it doesn't write it to this area. And so while I wish it did it automatically, it doesn't, and I'm sorry to say that. So that's why when you take your exam, it's very important that you click submit. Right? Okay, it says you can only have 1 attempt at the course. Does that mean no retries? Actually, Rafet, I'm not sure where it's showing you only 1 attempt for that course. If you'd let me know, if you can screen capture that, let me know. I'd appreciate it. You can take this as many times as you want to, okay? You can take only 1 attempt at a time, but you can take it as many times as you want to. And so if you don't pass it the first time, you can come right back and take it again, or you can come back and take it tomorrow or whenever, whatever works for you. So you can take it as many times as you want to pass. Once you passed it, I'd see there's no real reason to take it again. Also, this exam is good for 1 year. So the certification expires after 1 year. Okay. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Any concerns? Michael Wong, I will check my email, and if I got an email for you, I'll send you that PDF. All right. Let me turn on my camera real quick just to say goodbye. And again, I want to thank you all for attending. Appreciate you spending the time with us. Tomorrow, again, we'll get into the admin stuff, more stuff here, play around. And otherwise, thanks a lot for attending. We'll see you tomorrow. Again, I'll be here. Odell will be here to answer any questions while you take the exam. So feel free to stick around, take the exam. Otherwise, have yourselves a wonderful day. And of course, please be safe. I'm going to stop the recording.